So here we have created a home.lspace and we have actually made it a startup page. Here you can see by default, right? You have this source page, which is your HTML, where you can actually write your scripted code or your HTML code. There you can also define your controls, which controls are PHP.NET. Fine. Now let's start up with the simple controls here. Now, so let me take a simple text box. Simple button and a text box. Let's understand a simple button and text box. Right. So here I've actually dragged and dropped this text box and button. So if you go to design view, we have a text box and you have a button. Right. Now you can see this is an HTML which I'm creating, right? Where this is the first line. If you want to break up these things in different lines, you can use something called BR tags. Right, some of you know simple HTML, right? Here is something which is a break tag. It will actually break your lines of code into HTML into different lines. Then you can actually check that. You can go to script view, you can see they actually went to two different lines. Right? If you want more, one more line to be created, save it up, you can see the movement will be different. So the scripting works in a pretty good way. Right. Now, so let's go back here. Now let's run and see how they actually work. So let me run this. So text box is something which takes input from user. Right. So where user can enter some add some text that it enables user to actually make a user enter some text. So here you can see is a text box and you can actually type something. So this is something which is your text box and your button. So let me click on this button. When I click on this button, you can see, so this is your page, right? And this is the URL part which you have. Now let's understand this URL part before actually going here and button click. Right? I'm just copying the URL. Now here, this is a URL. Now let's actually break this URL and actually understand what is happening here. Now every time that you browse on any site, right, you will be seeing the protocol. Now this is something which says that which protocol you are actually using, right? And this is something which is your HTTP protocol. If you will see HTTP or HTTPS or FTP, right? They are all the type of protocols, right, which we have. When you say HTTP, it is Hypertext Transfer Protocol, right, which is a basic internet protocol we have. And if you're talking about HTTPS, which is a secure HTTP protocol, right, which will be, every request and response will be encrypted and rendered, which needs certificates and all, right? So this specifies a protocol. And then localhost. Now this is something, so localhost, whenever you see localhost, right? Now this is a standard name convention of whenever you run these programs. If you say localhost, which means it will search only in your local machine, right? Now let's say if you are searching something else, let's say if you are giving stream.com or google.com, right? Which means you are actually specifying some domain, right? So when you give some domain name, then it will actually go across the internet to search for this domain. But when you specify localhost, and that's it. Now it will actually try to search name local at this port. Right? This is important. So for each and every application we normally create, right? So our Visual Studio will actually create a port which is free and it will allocate to your project. Right? But by in general, you don't see this part. The colon and port part you don't see in general real-time sites, right? Because every site will be deployed on a default 80 port, right? I'll show you while deploying this on iOS server. I'll show you where exactly you can mention 80 port. But in our project, let me go to properties here. I'll show you where exactly you have. Let's go to web. Let me stop this. You can see in your properties. Let's go to web here, and you have. You can see here. Use local iOS web server, right? And you have localhost and your port being created. So this is a port which will be using every time you run this site, right? So this will be the port which it should be using. How it is written by default, it will actually search which port is empty in your local machine, right? And it will open up and it will actually assign that port every time. But in general, when you actually deploy, so this is something which we are actually checking out in deployment time, right? Sorry, development time. But once you deploy your website, we will be deploying the website on 80 port. So when you deploy something on 80 port, you don't have to mention this, right? You don't have to mention your port and all. So this is something which is localhost, right? Which when you just type in localhost, which means it will directly check on 80 port. And whenever it checks 80 port, you will have your website being deployed, right? And it will actually pick your resource. But this is something which mentions which page or which resource you are actually looking for. And here it is home.aspx, which means you are trying to see home.aspx, which is a page over here. And our server will get this home.aspx and it will serve to client. Right? That's how this URL works. And this is something which actually specifies the domain. If you do localhost, you search in the local, and in the space in the place of localhost, if you do something else, right? Like if you know the domain, right? Like google.com or something, right? Then it will actually search in the. So go to that domain server as such. In that domain server, if you go to the 80 port directly, right, which the server will take care, and once you go to 80 port, then it will read what resource we are looking for, and then based on that, if the resource is found, then it will get the resource and it will be rendered in your server. That's what happens. If you know this. So this is the resource you are looking for in this port, in the local host, and it will get it. If you give resource name, wrong, see what happens. Let me give you 404 error, right? Which is like resource, not found or unavailable in error. Fine. So that's the reason why you have to mention the right resource to get your page. So this is something which is the URL part. Now you can see here the name of a tab is a localhost, right? So by default, if you don't mention any tab name or your current page title, now this is something which is called as a title we have, right? Here you can see now it's very clear, it's a title. Now if you don't mention title for your page, it will always take your domain name, right? It always. So see here, let me just go to some let me go to see here. As soon as the title, right, it will actually take the title of your server name, title of the domain you are typing, and as soon as it gets a title, it will replace. Right? So where to give the title? Now in your page, let me go to source, right? You have something called title here, right? In your head, your title, or in your page attribute, you will have a title. Let's say I'm going to type as a home, because this is my home page, right? You can give in your page attribute, you can mention the title, or also in your head HTML you can mention the title. Now let's go back and refresh this. So when I refresh this, you can see the title got changed, right? So this is something where you can actually mention your title. Now here, let's see, whenever you refresh it, or you refresh it from here, or F5 you do right now, you can see Now this symbol will be showing whether your action is working or not. What I mean is when I click on this button, see here, some action is happening, right? There are two things which in your web page, right? So before actually learning the different events which gets triggered whenever you access your page, right? Let's understand this. When I click on something when I click on this button, right? I mean in your action of pages, right? We would have actually gone through so many websites, right? So few websites are, whenever you click on some button or click on any calendar or click on any label or hyperlink, right? The page will stay in the same, the page will not be navigated, but you will stay in the same page, but it will do some action, right? So that is something which is called as a postback. Now postback is something which means there are two types of HTTP. There are multiple HTTP methods which we have, but mainly will actually occur to use get method or postback. Now get HTTP method is something where it is actually asking for some resource, right? Now when I select this and enter, which means I am asking for home.aspx resource, which is I'm asking for get method to get me this resource, and it actually got created. But when I click on this button, which means we are trying to post something to server, right? So when I click this, so it will post something and it will actually get some trigger back. So that is something which we normally call as a post back, right? So that is the reason why you can see here that, this. That's the reason why you can see here that you have your window. When I click, some action is happening and it is getting. That is something which is called the postback. Now this is a text box where you can actually enter some text here. Anyway, this is something which will be saved in your page cache. Right? Click on this button. Now this is your text box control. Now if you go to text box controls properties here, now how to return properties? You can select the text box either in an HTML view or go to design view, select that and click on F4. F4 will give you properties here. Right, here you can see by default your ID is text box 1, but always make sure your ID is understandable. Let's say we're giving txt some data, right? Now you can see your all object in designer and your ID in your HTML, everything will get changed, right? And you have so many other stuffs here where let's go to a few properties. Now you can actually mention your font, different fonts if you want to your text, right? When they say different fonts, you can select your font, what exactly you're looking for, right? And you can actually mention your, let's say I'm just giving this, and let's say I'm making a bold, and let's say I'm giving some size as large, or let's say let's large, right? And some font color, some blue, right? And so based on the selection here, it will actually change, right? And also you can actually specify the max length, right? Max length is, let's say if I give you 10 characters, right? This is the number of characters it should accept, 10 characters. So when I run this, right, you can see now. So when I type in something, now you can see it takes only 10 characters. We have selected some weird font elements, but that's fine. You can see it accepts 10 characters and it is not allowing me to type yes. Right? You can see the size of this and the typing, font you selected and the color you selected, everything is changed. And it accepts only 10 characters. Now this is something which are affected by change of your properties. Now let's select some decent font here. Fine, max length, and then we have something called one important text mode. Now you can actually select the text mode here. You have three different text modes here, mainly single, which is it will take single line, right? You have multi-line, which is your you can select. You can take your multi-line essay. You can take some paragraphs of data, which is multi-line. If you run this right, check it out how it actually takes. Now this is something which you can actually use as a paragraph. Let's say I'm going to type something. Right? We will take data in paragraphs. This is a multi-line, right? And others are like, we have password type, right, which will take, as soon as you type in that, it will take the masked characters by default. So let's say I'm typing here, you will see, it will automatically mask your data, right? So this is something where you can actually use it directly for your, right? So similarly, we have other stuff. You can see date time, it will accept only date time. You have the email, it will accept only email. And based on the usage, you can actually select your. Now for every control in .NET, we have a similar property called tooltip. A tooltip is something which is whenever you mouse over, right? Whenever you move the mouse to any control, let's say when I move the mouse here, you can see that we got a tooltip. Save all, which is Control Shift S. Move to this. You see Internet Explorer. Move to this. I mean, it is giving some, some mouse over here. You can also do that. Now here, in your properties, you can just say this is the user access. Okay, you can do this. So let's run this and see. Now when I mouse over, you can see this is for user alert. This is something which is a mouse over. Now it will be there for every control. It can be button or any control you're going to see. This is a common property you have, which is a tooltip. Fine. And you have your width, how much width you need for this text box, or you have a height, how much height you have, and also you have something called read only. By default, you can actually give some text. Let's say I'm giving some text as a right? By default, it will take some text. And let's say I'm going to make it as read only true on this. So when it is read only true, which means it won't allow me to enter anything. I can't edit this, and I'm actually typing. I'm trying to type or delete some character, and it is not happening because it is freezed. It is in read only. Right, to actually remove that, you have to do this. Right. Now this is something which is here, which are different properties here. And one important property which you have is the auto post back. What is auto post back? Now before that, let's learn something that's here. Now here, let me remove the default text here. So every time your page loads site, you can see by default whenever you create any page, you will have something called page underscore load. Right? Page underscore load is something which is an event, right? Whenever your page completes the pre-image, you see all the events. There are different events which get triggered whenever your page is loading. You see everything, but page load is one of the events. Now here, let me use this text box and fill some data in it. Let's see how to use code back now for the first time. Now here you can see what is the text box name. It is txt data, right? Now in my code back here, I can use C. When I type in txt, you can see we are getting txt data. Now every control, when you use every control, right, it will have so many properties. Whatever properties you have seen in your properties window, everything will be there, including some you can see everything. We have text, we have something called read only, right? We have so many stuffs. We have ID, we have color, font, everything, including some base methods, right? So now I use a text property, right? I'll set some text. So what I'm going to set is, so in .NET we have a class called date time, right? So date time is something which is a class which we can use to work on some data. So you have already seen this date time in our C# if you remember. I'll say datetime.now.toString. So what it will do is, it will actually take the current date time from my machine and it will set to my txt data. Let me run this. So you can see by default it actually got some date type filter. Now as soon as I click on this, you can see the time changes, right? But even if I refresh, as you can see, time will change, right? That time is changing here. Now here you can see I said whenever you click on this button, this is something which is a post-back method. And what I want in this text box, let's say you don't want to change your date and time on click of this, but whenever it actually goes, I want to get the data only. Right? Now in that situation, what you can do, you have something called, you can actually check if it is not post back. Now you can see you have a property of page. You can see here your home page, which is a class callback of your actual web page, is inherited from your system.web.ui.page. This is an actual page class we have in system.web, which is inherited. Whenever it is inherited, you can see all the events we can actually use them, and you can see we have actually made this class home as a partial class. Now we already know that what is partial class. When you define any class as a partial class, right, you can define this partial class in any number of parts. I can define partial class once here. If you go back, you can see you have the same name of home and you have defined as a partial again, which means partial class will allow you to define your same class multiple times. And during execution, what it will do, all the partial classes will be made as one class, main home, and it will actually combine everything at once. Now that's the reason why you can see your designer is a partial class, main home. Again, your home callback is a partial class, main home. And you can see this txt data is actually defined in some other class, some other file as such, which is txt data here, right? But it is a partial class, which means your home and this home scope are same, right? So collectively it is something which means you are defining your txt, your text box object in the same class. That is a partial class. Now you can see this property is something which is your postback property, something which is in your page class, and I am using it. And when I say not postback, which means whenever my page is triggered from postback event, I don't want to change the date time. Now let's run this and see what happens. Now click on this. Now you can see it doesn't change. Right? Now let me take one more control called label this time. Right? We have one more control called label. So label is a control which is used to display, just to display some data. Right? It's like a label, it's like a simple label where you can actually display some data. Now here you have a label, and you can again set some properties. Again you have something called tooltip. Everything is again, you have some font, right, to set, and different border style. You can have your CSS something where if you have a cascading style stream, you can actually apply. What is CSS? We'll see simple CSS in architecture classes. Not to worry. Right, now here, let me go back, and this is my post tag. Right, and after this post tag, let me take the label. Now you can see I can access my label one. Why? Because go to designer, you can see your label one object got created, and this is a partial class named home, and this is a partial class again named home. So I can access the object defined here in my partial class. Now let me just set text as datetime dot now. Right, which means I'm actually setting something in post tag, and in label I'm actually setting it directly. Now let's run this. Now click on this. Now you can see your text box datetime is not changing, but your label datetime changes. Right? So this is something which is the difference between post tag and the actual get method. Right? So this is a button control where what I'm doing, I'm just using the button control. As of now, I haven't used the actual different events of button control or any text as of now. But this is something which is to understand what is get and what is the post method differences. Right? Now, let's see the events part of these controls. When you have a button, right? Now what exactly you need in button? If you just look, let me just go to properties of this button. Again, your button will have different properties here, right? Now you can see your ID of this button is button 1, or maybe you can just call it as BEN, which is button. Let's say submit. I'm just going to submit this, and let's say I'm going to change the label of this, or text on this. Let me call it as some submit. As soon as I change, you can see the name of your button changes. Now you can actually add, your tooltips and everything. We'll come back to other properties a bit later. Right, now here, this is something which is the properties you are seeing. Right, now there are two steps which you can actually select here. Right, which is, one is the properties and other is something called events. Now what are events? Now events are something which gets triggered whenever you actually, let's say for instance of a button, when I click on this, I want to catch that click event and do some task. Right? So that is something which is a simple event you have. Right? Now you can see we have a simple click event. Right? Now you can see here, to get a click event, right? Now let me double click on this. So when I double click on this button, right, you can see it will generate an event for me. Now this is something where you can see BTL submit is your button underscore click is your event got created. Now the same thing, if you select and go to properties, you can see your click event is pointing to the method called BTL submit underscore click. Right, this is your event being created. Right, so go to your design class. You can see your button name got changed to BTL submit. Now let's come back here. Now here, let's say in BTL submit, what you want to do, when I click on this, let's say whatever is there in text box, I want to set it to label, let's say, which is txt data.text. This is what I want to do. I'll change my label text to the text data. That is something which I want to do on click of my button. Let's run this. So here when I click on this, now you can see your text will be same. Or let's change this to something else. Let's click on submit. Now you can see it will change. Right? So change it, it will change. Now this is something which is a click event you are doing. When I click on this, it will do some post back in Postgres I'm not changing the value of text box. It will stay as is, right? Now it will stay as is, and whatever data you set to text box, I'm setting it to the list. Now this is something which is called as an event of your control, which is your button submit. Same way, you have event for your text box too. Let's see that part. Now, when you go to text box and go to properties, right? Now you can see these are the events. Now you can see the main event. Now whenever you double click on any control type, whatever the event is mainly triggered, it will be automatically created for you. Now you can see the main event for the text box. You can see here as text changed. Double click on this, now you can see it automatically gives you the text change here. Right? So whenever text changed, let's say you want to set again the label data, label text with .txt data.text, which means now you can see I'm not going to change, or I'm not going to click on a button. But as soon as I change my data in text box and move the focus to some other control, it will automatically change the label text. Now let's see whether it is happening or not. Let's run this. So here we have, let me just change some text. And you can see the text is not changing, right? If you remember, your text data, let's go back. By default, for your text control, when you go back to properties, right, your post type will always be false, right? And your auto post type is false, which means your text control will not be enabled for doing some HTTP post operation. In order to do that, double click, make it true. You can click on drop down and click on true, or when you go to this cell and double click, right, it will actually change the option there immediately. And now save it. Now let me run this page. Right, now let me change something here. And see here, it automatically refresh. Page will be refreshed automatically. Change something and click on somewhere else. I'm not clicking on submit here, you can see. Right, I'm just changing. Right, I'm changing the focus. As soon as change the focus, it will actually change the text. This is something which is a text change event of your text box, and you are actually doing your assignment of this to function. Right? So this is something which is an event which you get triggered as soon as you have you change your text here. Right, you change. Now here, when you click on submit, it will. This is something which is different again. Right? I changed some data here, and I came out. It will change. But when you click again, it is doing one more goes back, right? And during goes back, you are actually getting the data of your text box and your setting. This is something which is your controls called text box, button, and your label. Right? So here we have to have, as we are now clear with few controls, right? Now let's understand what is the importance of post type here. Right? Now here let me take one more label here. Now here let me just understand. So let's say what I want to do here is I want to get how many clicks happened in this submit. Right? As soon as I click on this, let's say I want to set this one. And as soon as I click it again, I want to set this, I want to increment this I want to get the number of clicks as well, right? So let's do that now. So let me just select some color to this label. Right? So let me just give this service. Now when I double click on this, right, now let me take a simple variable here as and click. So initially let me set it to 0, and whenever I click on submit, what I will do, I will click press and label your variable, right? I am setting the click is the integer, so that's 2 string. Right? So here what I am doing, I am actually setting the label, right? Whenever I click, right, I am actually incrementing and I am actually setting the data. Now let's run this and see how it works. So let me click on submit. You can see it is 1. Let me click on submit. You can see it is again 1. Click on submit again, it is again 1. Now why it is happening to be 1? Now this is something which we have to understand in query now. Now, whenever you do some action on your page, right, it can be a submit or text change or whatever, and whenever you have one trigger to server and response to your application page, what does it mean is, your callbacks are classes, right? Your classes will always be re-instantiated for every request. Right? Your page, your home object will be created whenever you have a post or a get call. And now, whenever new instance of home is created, what will be the value of click? It will be always 0. It will always be 0. Right? And whenever it is 0, what will be? Will be 0 plus, which means it will always stay 1. And your data will be set to 1 always. Which means your state of your page, right, will always be refreshed as soon as some trigger happens. Means your class object will be created, a fresh object will be created for every request you are actually doing. Right? So this is how the ASP.NET, basically ASP page works. Right? Now here, before actually going to the state, let me show you something else here. Now let me go back. Now this was my ASP.NET control, right? Now let me take a HTML control, a simple HTML control. We have HTMLs here, right? A plain HTML. So you can also take this input text. Let's say I'm going to take this input text. Now this is a HTML. Go to source. You can see that your HTML text always tag is an input tag, right? And it has, you can see, ID is text1 and type is text. Now this conveys that you are using your input text. Now let me run this page and show you what is the difference between your .NET control, which is ASP control or text box, and your simple HTML control. Now let me change this to some. Now here, let me give some data. Let's give some input. Now let me click on submit. Now you can see as soon as I click on submit, right, you can see this data is retained in this text box, whereas your HTML data went off. Right? Enter it, do one trigger, that's it, your data is gone. Right? Which why it is so? Because every time you do your action, post back action or get action, right, your data will not be persisted. But in order to make sure your data is persisting, right, we will have to use something called Viewstate. Now Viewstate is the one which actually makes your data in your page scope to be retained. Now, but how it is retained on my label or my text box? By default, ASP controls will have Viewstate enabled. Now go to page source here. When you go to view source, right, you can see, I hope you have already seen this view source, right? Now this view source is nothing but, you will see the HTML part. As we said, your web page is something which is a complete HTML language part, right? If you go to view source here, you can see all your input, right? Every will be changed to your HTML, and you can see that part. But here you can see one extra attribute called hidden field. You can see this hidden field is for Viewstate. Now what happens is, for each control you have here, right, as your ASP controls have Viewstate automatically enabled. Right now you can see your ASP control, which is .NET control, automatically changed to input. Why it changed to input when you are actually looking at view source? Because your web page can understand only HTML. Your web page cannot understand what is a .NET control, right? Whether it is .NET control or a JSP control or anything. That's the reason why you can see internally your ASP control will be changed to your HTML control for input. And you can see it is an input of type text. Type text is something which makes your input as text box. And you can see name, length, and whatever you have mentioned, right, will be entered over here. Right? And now you can see here that as soon as you have this, right, and you do some post action, your Viewstate will have some encrypted, your encrypted value will be saved, which conveys what controls have got data to be retailed. Now that is something, that's the reason why whenever you're doing some action, right, with data in a text box, at least .NET control text box is retailed. So by default, ASP controls. So how to differentiate between these two? So we know ASP, .NET controls, you have ASP as a prefix. ASP colon, if ASP colon is prefix, then this is something which is a .NET control. But anyways, internally, your ASP text box will be using your input again. Now you can see, you can define your inputs again, input of type. Now you can see there are some input types. If you give button, now which means you are using input type button. You go back and refresh your page. Right, you can see a simple button. Right, and you can give some value as get data here and refresh this page again. Right, you can see something. Now this is your button. Now you can see when I click on this button, you can see no action is happening. Right? You have to write action for this. So that is the difference between your plain HTML controls and your actual ASP control. As soon as you click the diagram of your submit, any button or anything, right, it will automatically consider a post back and it will take your post back actions. Now let's see how we can actually use Viewstate to retain data. Now this is something which we have seen for controls, right? Let's see how we can actually retain data. Now as I said, Viewstate is something which is internal to the page object you have, right? Which you can use the property of Viewstate. Now Viewstate always saves the key value back. Now let me show you how this works. So by default, your if it is not post back, right, let me assign your label to.text to your click.post2, which is your click 0, right, for the first time, but we may have to use it here. Now here, as soon as you implement your click, let's actually save this in our Viewstate. You can see you have a Viewstate. I can use Viewstate in this way. Viewstate of, let's say, I'm gonna take a key called clicks, and then I'll save something called click. Now see what happens here. So here, what I'm doing is, as soon as I'm clicking on something, implementing here, I'm saving it in this click. Now you can actually remember Viewstate as any collection item there. You have a key and a value. Now what happens whenever you create a Viewstate, even if you are doing any post back trigger, even if your new object is created for your page class, right, your Viewstate will not change. This will always stay, and whatever data you are going to change, right, you are going to save, it will always stay. Now here, for the first time, what we are going to do, we are going to check if your Viewstate of clicks, right, is not equal to null. If it is not equal to null, then assign your click with your Viewstate, right? Because every time before I increment my click, I want to make sure whatever the last value was there should be instantiated first. So that means what it will do. Right? So every time I click on button, if I have Viewstate on clicks, I'm getting the latest click value, and then I'm actually doing the click business. Right? I can show you that by debugging, I can show you that. And what you're doing, whenever you click on this, I'm incrementing the latest, the last value, and then I'm again assigning it to Viewstate and the text. Let's see how it's going to work. And here, let's run this. Now, initially the value is 0. Click on this, you have 1. Click on this. Now you can see, right? As soon as you click, right? Now what is happening here? Right? Go to source, new source here. Now you can see your Viewstate, right, is already here, and which actually got some value included. Right? And whatever variables we are actually saving will be saved in our view, which is a Viewstate parent field. Right? So this is how a Viewstate works. And Viewstate is a page scope. Right? Only to your page it will stay. Right? Now you can see, as soon as I increment, and if you want to debug case, you can always do that. Let me put on here and also here. Let me click on submit. As soon as I click on submit, you can see a new object will be created, and you can see page load will be triggered every time you do some action. Now you can see the postback is true, that's why it won't come in. Right, I click on F5, now you can see it will come. Now when I go here, now you can see that yes, your Viewstate is not null and your click is 18. And what you are doing, you are incrementing your click and again saving that to Viewstate. And coming back to your text and you are saving it to click. That's how you will get a new click. Now this is something which is your Viewstate of your page. And now, why we started with Viewstate mainly because just to make sure that whenever you change something, it is a .NET which provides automatic Viewstate for all our controls. And that is the reason why you have things which are Viewstate. Right? So this is about Viewstate, right? And this you can actually use in. We will come back to Viewstate again when we actually talk about multiple states we have, or the event levels. The mode of communication we have. Right? We will come back to Viewstate. But here, the main intention is that all your .NET controls will have Viewstate enabled. Now let's go to more controls now. Let's see something called checkbox. Right? So let me drag and drop a checkbox control. And maybe I need a label control here. Right? So here, now basically every time I don't need a label because you can actually write your data directly on your screen. So by using your response dot write, response dot write will actually write something on screen. Now if you get back again, so whenever you actually take the data, right? Take the page, whatever you're writing your code and everything, right? It will execute everything. The final output will be converted to HTML and then it will write on the screen, right? So here you can always touch it back. You can say break and no break because I know that my final output will be HTML, right? Now I can say this is the response object. I'm just writing some response. Now this is something you can see, response is something you can see, it's a HTTP response you have, which means the final response it is getting out, right? On that you are writing something, a plain text. In that plain text I can use multiple HTML tags that which will be automatically rendered whenever you actually move it on a page. Let's run this and see how it looks. Let me remove this. And you can see this is my response address, and you can see there is a break here. If you go back to the source side, now you can see here that here you can see this is my response objective, 2 breaks, right? And 2 breaks are, you can see that there is a break after this. This is something which you can actually try using the response. That response object is something which is a HTTP response. If you want to write something on the page, you can always use a response. But if you want to arrange the data, whatever you are writing on page, then we are going to use some controls. One of the controls we are using is lay, which will be later on. Right? Now we are looking at checkbox from here. So you can see, again there is a checkbox. Let's use some break here. Let me remove this HTTP because for now, let's use some break here. So now here we have a checkbox. Now even for checkbox, if you go to properties, right, we have many things. Anyways, you know, all the font, different properties will be same across different controls. So tooltip, right, everything will be same. Now you have your post back. First, let me click this post back too. Now what is post back? Whenever I change something here, right, it will actually trigger a post request, and you will get your response. For the same checkbox, if you go to events, now you can see by default it highlighted your check changed. Now let's go to design. Now this is my checkbox. Now for this checkbox there is no name. Here you can see it is showing my ID itself, which is checkbox 1, right? Let's give some text. Let's say your checkbox name is let's say enable. Some color, right? This is a text you can see, which actually got it, right? From this simple checkbox here. Now let's see what exactly happens here. When I run this, I have a checkbox. Now when I check it, you can see there is a post back happening, right? Now if you don't have auto post back enabled, right, if I disable it and run this, now you can see there will be any change, right? Any change in that. That's what normally called auto post back to. Now let me double click on this. When I double click on this, now whatever event it will give, it will actually give when you change your checkbox. Now you can see the event name is check changed. Now whenever check change, let's say label 3, which we have back, let's say let's assign some date time dot now, just to see the effect is happening. So run this. Okay. Now start to, right, as soon as you check or uncheck your text checkbox, right, you can see some action is happening. Now in this way, you can have any number of checkboxes you have, right? Now how can I import, how can I get whether this checkbox is there or not? Now whenever I check this, I want to change the label text, otherwise I don't want, right? You can see as soon as I check this, I am getting changed. When I uncheck again, I am getting changed. Check again, right? But let's see how to use. Whenever I check this checkbox, I want label to be changed. Otherwise, I don't want it. Right? Let's see how to do that. Now, in the checkbox object, right? We have something called properties check. Now we have a property called checked. Now this will give you whether your checkbox is changed or not. I can use this, right? If my checkbox is checked, then only set the data, otherwise don't. That's what I mean. Right? So for label 3, let's give some font so that you can understand that this is whatever is happening is correct. Let's give some size to or something. And check this, you can see study again. And I check this, and you can see it won't change. When I check it again, you can see it will change. Uncheck, right? So it is, you can check whether your data, your control is in which mode. When I check, it will change. When I uncheck it, right, it will again stay back. This is how you can actually use your control, when you have your data. Right, you check and uncheck states. Right, so this is your checkbox control, and in this way you can actually have any number of checkboxes as such. So what you can do here, you can have your checkbox, go to source, let's say this is your checkbox. Right, you have more and more checkboxes. Right, and you can have multiple checkboxes. Let's say go to design. Let's say this is something which is green, right, and auto post back is I'm not going to check it something, and go to next one, and let's say we have orange, right, some, and this. So checkboxes are something which allows you to select or unselect, right? You select data or unselect it. That is something which you check out. So you can actually give some options of in a few countries or few things, and you want to select it. You can always use a checkbox, right? To give an option to use whether you have this feature or not. If you don't want, you can actually ask them to uncheck or check it out. Right? So this is something which is a checkbox. Now let's go to the next one, which is let's say drop-down list. So I'm going to take the drop-down list here. Now this is something which is very important on the tab, right? So in your drop-down list, this is something which is a combo box as such, where you can have some controls, some drop-down combo box items here. Now first thing, let's see directly adding items. So let's add, and this is a list item. Each and every item in your drop-down list is list item, where you can give some data. Let's say I'm going to do some and we have some web, and again let's say have something right. So these are few items we have in here. You click on OK, and now run this. Right? Now you can see these are simple form boxes. You can see as soon as I change anything, right, nothing is getting changed. Right? Because mine again auto push back for this form box is not true. But you can see I actually fill the data statically. I mean, this is something which is a static filling of your box. Right? Now let me take a new name for this. Now let me just copy and paste this label, and you can see when I go back, you can see label will be changed just to get the property changed. Now you can see here label 4, right? Now let's go to the combo box control, and you can see auto post back is fast. Or else you can click on this, you can see enable auto post back. You can always do that, right? And now whenever you have enable post back, let me run this and show you how it works. Now you can see as soon as I change, right? You can see the post back happens. Change it, what's going to happen. You can see this part. This label is changing whenever you do some post track to any of the control, right? Do anything, this time is changing here, right? And let's check this one, the time will change. Now, which means the post track is happening. Now, let's see the event part here. Now, let's go to properties here. Now, these are properties for your control. You have one more thing called enable. By default, it is enabled to select. If you want to pre-select this, you can always do that. See, all these properties, right? You can always select even from your callback also, right? Now, let's say you have a drop-down list, right? You can see drop-down list dot enabled. You can make it false, right? All the properties, whatever you have here, right? You can actually, all these are like a direct properties which you can actually select from code behind also. Right? It is not something which you have to do from here. Right? Now let's say you have some font color for this. Let's select some blue and let's give some size for this. Right? So that you're actually selecting some data. Now here, now double click on this and you can see it is something which is your selected index changed. Whenever you change your selected item, this will be triggered. Right? Now let me select label fold of text. We have some property of in drop-down list called selected item. Now selected item will give you a list item. List item is a class, right? So if you remember, whenever we are adding list item, right? See, this one list item. In list item, there are some properties, text and a value, right? So we are interested in text, let's say. So go to callback and I want dot text. Now this is something which is a label text I'm going to change. Now let's run this and see how it works. So now here we have two, let me select something else and you can see changes. Something else, change it again. Right? Now your post back is happening and also whatever you have selected, you are actually getting that. Right? Now this is your normally we normally call combo box or basically recent versions we normally call it as a drop down list. Right? So this is your drop down list. Now we have something called image, right? Now this is the image control we have. Now image is just to show the image part. Let's go to properties of image. And here you can see by default selected image URL. You can always do some image. Now as of now you can see I don't have any images in my project. Right? So let's copy some images in here. Now here that I can create multiple folders here, right? Let me create a new folder here and call it as images. And I will add existing. If you want to add any existing item, you always have seen some new item and all, right? If you want to add existing, you always can select existing item. And let me go to desktop to select some image here, and let me select some image. Now this is something. Now select here, go to properties, image URL. Now in the image you can see that this is an image here. Now in this image, I can set some height of this. So as soon as you set some height, right, it will automatically get some width. Right, let me do some 20 here. Right, or some 40. Right, basically, if you set height, automatically the width will be adjusted as we run this. So this will be your plain image. Whenever you want to keep your image, you put out this like this. Right, so this is your image and everything else will be what you see here. So this is your image. Now, so let's see in this drop down list, right? While understanding this drop down list, you have to understand one more thing called data part, in which you have few data sources. Now let's see one of the data source here. So in this is one control. Let me take one more drop down list rather. Let me see that. drop down list. Now here, now 8 items, I don't want any of these items, let me remove. Now what I want to do is I want to choose it from data source. Now here what I am going to do is I am going to tag or attach my combo box or drop down list to direct to database. Whatever items are there in my database, I want to tag. How to do that? Two ways. Either you can choose your data source directly, or you can actually choose your SQL data source and then bound it to this. Let's see this part. Let me click on choose data source. You can see by default I don't have any data sources to add to this page. Right? Now if you want to add, you can always add. See, let's see from here. Two ways. Let me drag and drop this SQL data source. Right? As soon as I drag, I have to configure. Click on this. Now you can see it is asking for some connections. Let me take a new connection. Now we have already seen this window if you remember. Now what I'm doing is I'm actually setting some data source with my database, right, directly, and it works in real time. So let me select data source here. Now this is my SQL Server node. Select my databases. So I'll actually tag the college database here. Test connection. Okay. Click on OK here and then reload. It will load the name here. Right. You have college here and you can see the connections will be there. Click on next. Do you want to save? Yes, I want to save the configuration file, the college connection tree. Click on next. Now you can see here which table you want to configure for this data source. Right? Let's say I want to configure my students table. And you can see there is a star. Star means select star from students, which means all columns will be selected, or you can actually select a specific column. Also, you can see this wizard window will have an intelligence to even build a query. If you want to bring where roll number is also, click on this. Now you can see which column the roll number, let's say operator is equal to, right, source, whatsoever it is, click on none and you can give value like 4. Right? So even this, your where class you can actually print directly. Roll number is equal to 4, which means always your data will come for roll 4. That's all it is. You can cancel for now. Now here you can also say order by, sort by roll number, ascending or descending, right? After that, then by right student name, ascending or descending, and it will give you 3 level of order percentages. Right? Now you got this and click on next here and test. If you want to test, you can set. You can see everything got here. Now your data source is ready. Right? Say this. Now you can actually bound it to your drop down list. Click on this and say choose data source. Now you can see, yes, I got one SQL data source. And you can see in the SQL data source there is a table which contains multiple columns. Which column you want to map? Let's say I want to map the student name. And the value part of drop down list, let me keep it to on this now, and see what happens. So here it will actually give you the dynamically it will actually give you all the data. Now here you can see it says it is giving the duplicate names here, right? You can always go and change your data source here. Let's say you can see in the refresh schema, if you have a added key or configured key. So let me just stop it first. Two ways, configure data source. Next, here you can see unique, return unique rows, or you can say, let's say I want only student name, which is unique, right, distinct student name. Click on next, test query. You can see I'm getting unique things. Finish. Now you refresh schema and then go back here and click on the so that it will actually get the latest source you have. source, right? Because you have to select your data source with source name and source name again on this. On this. Okay. Now, previously, why we got that error? So, because what we did previously was, I removed the roll number column here, right? You can see I was not selecting roll number, right? And what happened, I was actually using roll number field in my setting here. So as soon as I remove it, right, so that's the reason why it actually gave some error. Now you can see when I run this, it will actually give me some data here, unique data, and this unique is actually getting based on both roll number and name. Anyways, your name will always be, roll number belongs to unique, right? That's the reason why you're getting all the data. Right, so this is something how you can actually set your data source directly connected to the database. Now, whenever you change something, this will be changed automatically, right? And the SQL data source is second way how it will actually connect. When you go to configuration file, you can see one connection string added. Now you can see in a web.config, the connection string added, which is college connection string with the data source, the catalog, and the integrated security. Right, so this is how we actually add the different controls to your page, and this is how we can actually see it. Now similarly, you have one more thing called list field or list box, right? Now this list box again is something which will show. Now combo box is something where you can actually select one at a time, right? But the list box is something, similarly, you can see here, we have same options here. You can edit items, so you can add different list items, right? Or you can actually choose data source. Let me choose it. Let's say I want the same names here. See, I can make it data pool, right? When I run this, these are list box that we have, right? So I can select multiple, I can see multiple things in here, but if you want to select multiple items in here, right, then what you want is, you go to properties of this list box, we have something called selection mode, right? You can make it as multiple, right? Just to actually show you this data. Let's run this. So list box and basic differences in here, you can actually see all the details and you can select multiple. Press on control and you can see multiple things in here. Right? And the auto close back, we are not using auto close back for this items as such. Right? And go back here and let's say leave a list box item here, right? Now go to properties, you can see here for list box item I'm not using it. Right? As soon as I change here, it will event will be triggered again. Go to events, you can see selected index changed or text change. As soon as you, all these are different events you have for your control. But new control, when I click right, it will actually give you it. Now let me take a button control here. The button control is a button, some other button here. Now you have your list box item 1 dot. You can see you have something called selected. You can see you get selected indices which will give you all the indices. You can see that item dot text. So let's let me take one label here. Right. And let's say I'm going to make it as a single row. Right. And also let me make it auto goes back. if you want to authorize this. Let's see the auto transport here. And this button, what I want to do, I want to set the label. What is the label ID? It's a file here. So let's click button here. And now here, let me set a button. You can see here. Right, so this is something which we have actually selected, data, and based on the data change you are actually using that, you are actually copying the file of this, which is mainly through the button post bracket will actually select this. So this is something which we have in control, which is a response control only, right? And let's say you have some things. What else you have here? Let's see what controls you can take. You can have, you see the radio button part in the class. What is happening here? Right. Now, hyperlink is mainly used to propagate between different pages. This is basically used to move between. Hyperlink will actually give you a link, a label. This is a link label we have, where if you click on this, you can actually get some source or move to some other source. Now, in properties of hyperlink, right, you can see, let's say, go to, let's say, page 2, let's add in this. There, you can see there is a property called navigation bar. Right? So before going, let me create one more web form here, which is second page. Let me call this page 2. Right? And this is page 2. Right? And let me set some style for this div. Now you can see as soon as I select this div or properties, I have all the properties, and we've already seen the style part. Right, where you can actually select two things. Let me select some. You can see some font size here, right? And you can select some font color, right? So many things you can do. Now this is my page 2, which is page 2 here. Now let me close all other stuff which I don't want. Let's go here, and this link label, let me give some navigation URL to. When I click on this, you can see we have all the pages under the repository. Or else you can always go to source and you hyperlink here. If you want to give your navigation URL, you can see you can select even from here. If you go to find your page, you can always pick your URL. Let's say I want to page 2. You can see as soon as you give, if you take the root part, this logo symbol is root part. This root is nothing but if you go to the web flow and then you can search for page 2. That's what it is. Let's run this and see how it works. Now you can see we have a hyperlink here. Click on this. When I click on this, you can see I'm in page 2. So this is how I navigate. We'll see more navigation options. We'll see how to send data from one page to other page, everything in our classes. Right? So this is your hyperlink. So this is what we have for today's class. So we'll see more topics in the next class.